Alright, so I did not expect this at all. It looks like I have to start to make the game engine, and on that we'll come back later. But what you need to know right now is that I made an actual vscode extension that not only roasts your code with such messages that it even made me question why I even made this, but it also disables shortcuts, and if you don't use your breakpoints carefully, this can happen. I decided to call it Code Roaster. It looks like it uses TypeScript, which basically JavaScript, and I mean that would be legitimate if I was building a web app, but guess what? I'm not. Besides that, because I'm such a pro programmer and this being one of the easiest languages to learn, you just know that the extension started running as soon as I... Damn. So you know how every extension that hits the story is meant to ease your workspace, right? Like there are language extensions that shows errors, then there's custom ones, then there are debuggers, but no. I knew I had to do something about it because there is no challenge anymore. Instead you just type 3 letters and boom, half of the code is ready to go. So the first thing that came to my mind is breakpoints. If you don't know, breakpoints are really useful when you want to debug something. So for example, we have this Python program that gets a number from the keyboard and checks if it's greater than 10, then prints accordingly. It works as expected. Now watch what happens when I put here a breakpoint. As we get to if, the code just stops and it lets us see every variable and their value. Another cool thing that we can do is modify that value, so even if we typed 20, when I set the value here to 5, we get the too low message. Now with this extension you can still do this, but with only 5 breakpoints, which is very generous. Just watch. Next thing, I wanted to make sure that you cannot compile or undo the code, at least using the keyboard shortcuts. Apparently your extension can override any shortcut, and I mean any shortcut, so that way instead of you being able to just Ctrl Z from this, you now get this error message. The same thing also happens when you try to compile with F5. Okay, now short break from all of this. A few updates on the game engine thing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch this video. Basically, I'm making my own game engine when I hit 1000 subscribers on YouTube, and since I'm 50% there, here's what's gonna happen. The game engine won't have a GUI like Unity or Unreal, and it will use something like OpenGL. Now, this isn't like 100% sure, I still haven't chosen yet the graphical library, and it will be made out of multiple DLLs. Now there will be one DLL that will handle input, another one that will handle rendering, and another one that will import assets and so on. By using this system you can use from this game engine only what you need. So for example, for the simplest 3D game you would probably need the main DLL, rendering DLL, and input DLL. There's just one problem. I still don't have a name for this engine, so leave your suggestions in the comments. Anyways, make sure you watch until the end if you want to use the extension in your code. Just make sure you have a backup. Enough of this. How can I actually generate an insult every time you make a mistake in your code? If there was an API that I could use that will give me access to like a large language model like ChatGPT, well, of course there is. It's called Google Gemini. Now don't ask why, but it's basically because it's free for testing purposes and it's easier to set up. Anyways, the first generations were like the final ones, but they are not really mean. They just insult your skills, right? So think about it. What fictional character from one specific game is extremely mean and would fit this perfectly? That would be Brock Trevor from GTA 5. And Gemini is unhinged. That's all I gotta say. I think I'm gonna revert the extension. However, if you want the same response, this is the prompt I used. Until this point the extension is pretty based and technically I've achieved my purpose for this video. However, it's missing something, and that is sounds. Implementing it was extremely easy thanks to this, and it would have taken even less time to implement it if I was looking for the right location. Anyways, now when you place breakpoints, undo, compile, code gets deleted, and even when typing there are random sounds that will get played. For some reason there is a delay before the sound is actually played and I don't know why, but besides that, I think I'm done. Now I'm gonna make a very basic palindrome program using the extension that I just created. And just so you know, palindrome is a number that is equal to the reversed version of it. So for example, 121 is a palindrome. Alright, so I tried to make the program a little bit longer than I had to, because I'm pretty sure that I can do it in less time and in less lines of code. You can also hear the sounds. So, let's compile. Oh, yeah, this is more of an inconvenience. Anyways, why is 121 not a palindrome? Let's add a breakpoint. Oh, that's why. See, that's just one example of why I hate when programming languages try to simplify everything. If I specifically made my variable an int, why would you also make it a float? You know what, it doesn't matter. Alright, now it works. Okay, so if you want to test this for yourself, go to the link in the description, clone the repository, then in vscode type this, and go to the location where you cloned the repository. After that, make sure the extension is enabled, and don't forget to run the setup command and follow the instructions. Also, a quick disclaimer, you have to run the setup command every time you want to use the extension. Though I don't recommend it because